So this PowerPoint is going to be your first introduction into the political spectrum. This is something you'll need to know for definitely the first half of the course, chapters 1 through 5. So this is a PowerPoint you want to focus on, likely. Take some notes and review when you get home. Okay, so political ideologies are belief systems. Right? And they're essentially belief systems that help us figure out, well, how should you interact in the world? What should the government do as well, in particular? What is the role of the citizen? So that's you as an individual. What is the role of the community? Right, so that might be the neighborhood you live in. What is the role of the city? So city of Leduc, province, country. So how should society work? That's another topic that ideology tackles as well, right? So we already talked about communism. I'll just tell you a story. This is from a friend of mine wrote a novel about his mother's experience in communism. He was from China. In his story, Freedom Swimmers, he talks about how there was a period in Chinese history under the communist government where, you know, how should society work? Well, they should do what the government tells them. So there was this period of time where they needed more metal, the government, to boost their industry. So they went to every citizen's house and they took all of the metal. So cooking pots and pans, whatever metal they had was taken from them. Cooking utensils and everything. And so he writes about this in his book, how his mother experienced this, that, you know, one day some government officials came in with weapons, you know, they're very threatening and intimidating. And they simply said, give us your metal stuff. Like, we're confiscating it because the government, the society, like as a society, you should support what your government and leaders are doing, and this is what they're doing, so you have no choice. Okay. In our societies that are more central, you know, there's to some extent an emphasis placed on the role of the citizen. Democratically speaking, right? So what is your role when you're allowed to vote? You know, what is asked of you? What is your responsibility? Anyone, any guesses? Once you're to vote, right? And prior to voting, what should we do maybe? Research. Do our research, right? Get informed, educate ourselves, right? Not that everyone always does that, but you know, that's part of the emphasis. Once you get people together with similar ideologies or how you view the world, how you think society should work, you know, they can form a political party, and those beliefs will inform how you think these issues should be dealt with. You know, how should a society progress? Should society progress? Right now we're having our society, our culture is discussing, well, you know, how much fossil fuel should we use? Which has allowed many people, particularly in Europe and North America, to progress rapidly, right? I mean, everything around you is fueled by fossil fuels, right? Sure, the lights aren't on, but electricity is generated by burning fossil fuels, right? Consistently as well, right? A lot of the fibers in your clothing are, you know, they're not organic material, right? Like cotton or wool. Right, so that's also a product of modern progress as well, and so, you know, it becomes challenging, right? Because don't you think everyone wants to have this nice high quality of life, where you have clean running water, you have electricity, your cities are safe, roughly speaking, you have housing, you have food. Okay. Okay, you have a couple things here that can shape your beliefs, so your culture and personal experiences, right? Some of us are from different countries, our families are from different countries, so at home we have potentially we have a very different cultural experience at home than we do at school. What is and isn't allowed in the house, and that's going to inform how you think people should behave, how you think problems should be solved. Your family and friends are going to have a big impact on you, so it's very likely that whatever your parents believe, For many people, it's very likely they end up believing similar things. Okay, whatever your parents are teaching you at home as well, or whatever your teachers teach you, depending on how much of an impact, or rather, let's say the school system over 12 years, if you're taught to believe a certain thing after 12 years, you'll likely believe that. Right? Your friends are important as well, and you're all entering a period in your life where the opinions of your friends are, let's say, more important than the opinions of your parents. And getting the approval of your friends, right? You're just at this time in your life where that's very important, fitting in. And everyone goes through that time period in their life as well. Religion can have a big impact on your belief system, what you think should be done, how people should intervene. Okay. Your social status and wealth as well. So, if you're wealthy, maybe you're less likely to vote for more left-leaning or socialist policies that redistribute wealth. Particularly if you had to work hard to build the wealth that you have, to build the life that you have, and you did it, let's say, in an honest way, and someone comes along and says that you're very privileged for having this house, for having this money, you should give it to someone else who's less privileged. Well, if you worked hard your whole life, how are you going to feel about that? Maybe not feel so good, right? Where you live can also impact your beliefs as well. So if you live in a city, you might not really know how food is produced. I'm sure some of you have seen on Instagram or YouTube, there are some pretty extreme documentaries out there or interviews. They'll go in America, they'll go to a supermarket, a grocery store, and they'll ask people like, hey, where do you think meat comes from? And there have been some people who legitimately did not know that it came from animals. Like they didn't understand that, to get a steak, you have to kill a cow. Which is very extreme, but, it can get to that, right? Like a lot of people don't understand how things work because they're so far removed from the process. Okay. Whereas if you live out in a more rural area, where there's less people, it might be harder for you to deal with the intensity of a big city. There's just a lot of people, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of movement, a lot of strangers, and that can be intense as well. Okay. And that can shape your belief system. The media, okay. How many of you watch news regularly? Yeah. Do you find yourself very depressed?
When I watch it, yes, absolutely.
When you watch the news?
When my parents used to put it on every day in the morning.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, what was awful about it?
Everything.
Does the news ever tell you something like happy?
No.
Not really. No. I just don't listen to it because I don't care.
It tells me about how much Canada is burning.
30-second story at the end.
There's one 30-second story where something good happens.
Oh yeah, they would say like happy birthday to some like random couple. That's it.
So when I was a kid, every now and then the news, they would have like these little they would basically tell their kids, tell parents as children, like, hey, draw us a painting of like your favorite school, right, or your whatever. And people would send in for a contest, so the news would show these funny little paintings and drawings that were drawn, or like an Easter egg drawing competition. No, they don't do that anymore, right? It's just depressing. But there is this idea that if all you focus on is the problems, everything that's wrong in the world, that's all you'll see. Right? So if you just watch the news and they're always telling you like, hey, like somebody got murdered, this house was broken into, this place is burning down, the water levels are rising here, you're very likely going to be impacted by that emotionally and mentally. And then, your beliefs are going to be that, hey, the world is like going downhill, things are horrible, right? Which is quite false. Like now is like the best time to be alive, really. Right? I mean, we have all this abundance. And yeah, there's an example down here, right? So obviously, if you're someone who works minimum wage, and the government's in talks about increasing minimum wage, like what do you think you'll say? Do you think you'll support it or be against it? Support, right? Because it impacts your life directly. But let's say you are the owner of a business, and you're trying to figure out how do I pay, 7 people $15, $16 an hour, 40 hours a week. and the government's saying, well, let's increase that to $17 an hour, what perspective might that person have?
Oh man.
Yeah, they're gonna go, oh man, how am I supposed to do this? I gotta fire somebody. If I gotta pay everyone an extra dollar, I can't afford all of this, right? So maybe they're against it, right? And then you gotta ask, how many people in the government have ever run a business, right? Or had employees to pay someone and had to deal with that stress. Most government workers have not done that. So if you do choose to draw, I think you should draw a spectrum, right and left, across your page. Towards the left side, the extreme, you have communism. So that's a lot of government intervention. Right. Does everyone understand the word intervention?
I forgot.
Right. It means to intervene. Right. They can potentially stop you from doing things. Fascism isn't all that great either. It's pretty terrible. Fascism might focus on supporting one group over another, right? So yeah, for example, like in Nazi Germany, they were very they were very much in support of Germans, but maybe not so much other groups of people. Okay. Definitely not in support of Jews. So those are your extreme ends. Those are the outsides. So if you come in a little bit from the right, you'll have more conservatism, which is much more common. And again, those are people who want to conserve things the way they are. They like tradition. They like, let's say old-timey values, right?